Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in today. Um, we are here with Alex Mary. Thank you, Alex, for joining. It's very exciting
Thanks for having
because
me.
yeah, it's very exciting because it's the first time we have actually someone like you, like a public speaking coach and an entrepreneur. So it's gonna be very interesting to know your background, your career, and your path, yeah, to what you did so far, what you have achieved. So yeah, thanks for joining, and I'll let you give an introduction to yourself, and then we can get into the questions.
No worries at all. Yeah, so I'm Alex. I'm a public speaking coach and kind of work in the realm of thought leadership. So helping people communicate ideas that go on to hopefully create some sort of lasting change on a much larger scale than just a person speaking on a stage to an audience. It's about creating change on a big scale, but using the
Yeah,
medium of public speaking.
yeah, it's very interesting. And so yeah, how did it start? Like when you were like years ago when you were studying, you started working in a fundraising charity, and then from there you realized that you wanted to a career into public speaking.
I fell into this. To be completely honest with you, like a lot of people, public speaking is interesting. It's one of
Yeah,
those things that anytime someone finds out that this is what I do, there's always a story from someone's own personal experience
yeah,
that's attached to it. Uh, People tend to not public speaking as an activity. People either love or hate. There are
yeah,
very
definitely.
few people who are just like, yeah, it's cool, it's fine. Most people either I love it, I love it, I love being on stage, I love communicating ideas, or absolutely hate it. Worst possible thing to do in the world. I couldn't think of anything worse. I think I read somewhere that it's up there listed as one of the things people fear worse than
Yeah.
death or something
Wow.
crazy like that. To be completely honest, if my teachers from school knew what I was doing now, I don't think it would make a huge amount of sense to them. I wasn't particularly loud or hugely confident or willing to speak out in a group situation at school. I spent
Yeah.
most of my life uh, avoiding public speaking like the plague. So it's very
Same for me.
strange how you end up finding yourself in situations like this where I'm helping people with this sort of thing. But I fell into it, right? So when I was at university, some guy came up to me when I should have been revising outside the library, and he said, "Have you got a summer internship sorted yet?" I was like, "No." He's like, "Come along to this meeting." So I go along to the meeting, and 6 weeks later, I was starting this charity fundraising internship.
Yeah.
2 years later, I was in charge of it and helping it grow along with the two other founders.
Yeah.
And our growth strategy, public speaking, was at the very heart of that. We'd spend 3 months every single year going to different campuses across the university campuses across the UK, and we would run hour-long kind of career workshop / information meetings where we tell people about the internship, and that was really how we
Yeah.
got it to grow. But I always remember one of the hard things was this was back at a time when businesses weren't using social media. So the only real way you could
Wow.
get students to hear about what you do was assuming that you don't have a brand already. And at the time we had absolutely no brand at all. Was you've got the careers service who will do some promotion for you to try and get students along to the meeting. But we used to go on campuses. We do a bit of flyering, but
Yeah.
the most effective way of getting people to turn up in a room was what we called lecture shout outs. So what we
Oh.
do is we turn up on campus like 5 to 9. You see all the students walking into these big lecture theatres, and we go up to the lecturer and we'd say, "We've got a job opportunity for the students. Before you kick off your lecture, could I just let everyone know about the opportunity?"
Mhm.
And they'd be like, "Yeah, sure." And the way we used to pitch this was, we were trying to create something from nothing here. So we had to create a real buying atmosphere. So you'd have 400 students staring at you, and you had a 1 minute
Wow.
pitch you had to give them to try and persuade them to, rather than go for lunch, come or go home after their lecture. They had to stay on campus and come and meet us at this information meeting. We had 60 seconds to do it. And at the very end, what we'd say is, I've got a few tickets for anyone who's interested in coming along to the meeting today. If you would like to be there, you're going to need a ticket because it's going to be busy. And sometimes it really wasn't busy. But again, we were trying to create this buying atmosphere. Put your hand up if you'd like a ticket. And the number of times, you can imagine, right? 5 to 9 on a Friday morning after a big Thursday night out, students are just sat there looking at you pretty unimpressed.
And they think about their own things.
The number of times I said, put your hand up if you like a ticket. No one puts their hand up. And you've got to walk out of that lecture room. You feel about this big and so forth. And when you've had a few hardcore rejections like that, you start to realize that that is pretty much the worst thing that can happen when you speak on stage. Just absolute no kind of positive reaction from the crowd. So when you get used to that and you can take that on the chin, suddenly you become far more relaxed about presenting and so forth. So that was one of the biggest public speaking lessons for me. But it was doing that stuff and putting myself in difficult situations like that, where I had to sell something and the feedback was there on the spot, right at you. They were the times that really started to help develop, I guess, my strength of character on stage, I suppose.
Yeah. It's incredible. You actually started like that, straight into like the hard way, like in front of so many people, and trying to convince them.
It was raw hustle.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, we then eventually we'd have our meetings at 1 o'clock that people would come along to, and we'd then have to deliver our meetings. And you'd have people walking out halfway through because they realized that the internship, charity fundraising, not for them. They don't want to waste the rest of the hour there. So you'd have people, you spend all this time trying to get people into the room, then people start walking out. So how do you deal with someone who's just walking out halfway through putting yourself in these kind of awkward environments when you can just be totally at peace with how the audience are reacting to what you're saying? Then you can, it takes a lot of the anxiety and a lot of the worry away, particularly when you're doing it on a daily basis, repetition. There was an amazing podcast. You've probably come across it. Tim Ferriss runs a podcast. The guy who wrote the 4-Hour Work Week. And he interviewed Susan Cain. And Susan Cain is a scientist, and she has written several books on introversion and extroversion and how they manifest themselves. One of the books is called Quiet Power. I highly recommend people read it. But the podcast where he interviewed Susan Cain, she was talking a lot about the lead up to speaking at TED, at Big TED. And Tim Ferriss has spoken there too. And it's so interesting what she was saying about how she was completely terrified. And it was just repetition, small little bits of exposure therapy that have helped her jump the hurdle and go on and become one of the most renowned thought leaders in the world.
Yeah, definitely. And it's incredible, like the progression, the improvements that you make in that way. And but I was curious about it. What's the strategy that you've used to convince people, because fundraising is quite must be quite difficult, and often people try to avoid it, like donations and things like that. So
it's funny. So the type of fundraising we were doing, to give the people listening some context, was door to door. Which when you say door to door, you're like, oh no, that's the reaction, right? Oh no,
exactly.
not that guy. So it was really interesting because you get to see how you communicate and how people respond to you in different ways. Your job when you're going door to door is to build trust with people as quickly as you possibly can. Yeah. And there is
a few seconds to convince them, like, not to
you
close
really,
that
really
door.
do. Yeah, exactly. So it's an amazing testing ground. And when I did the internship as a fundraiser, the first 6 weeks, I wasn't great. I'm not going to lie. I wasn't getting lots of people signing up to the charities that we were fundraising for or anything like that. But we had a slightly different, it was interesting. We had a very different strategy to a lot of fundraising companies out there. So our sales process, if you like, was we would knock on the door, and our goal was we'd spend 60 seconds chatting to people on the door. And our goal was to essentially be invited into the house. And we wouldn't like try and sign people up, hard sell. We'd spend half an hour with them. We'd have a cup of tea, but we'd talk through the charities and we'd build a relationship with them. And what we found when we compared our industry statistics to the rest of the other fundraising statistics out there, people stayed signed up to the charities and were donating money to the charities for much longer because we'd taken time to create that trust, rather than often what you'll see is these days. Probably less door-to-door happening now. Don't fact check me on that, but I'm just going from how much door-to-door I receive. I live in central London, so it's a prime slot for door-to-door. We don't see a huge amount, but we do get a lot of people on the streets or a lot of people at train stations trying to stop you. But if their sales process is 5 minutes, ours is kind of 45 minutes. So it's interesting to see when you take the time to build trust and build relationships with people, how quickly that can change. But we all had a set script, and then it was how we kind of communicated that script and made it our own that started to dictate the success we started to have.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, sales strategy. Yeah, and eventually, how did you realize that this would have been your career? How did that happen? That step into I decide to become a public speaking coach and continue.
So, one year I'd probably been in the business. We'd been growing the business quite quickly. Okay. We went from about four people to 250 odd people within about 4 years.
Yeah.
And it was all through public speaking, right? So spending 3 months a year traveling across the UK, chatting to students.
Yeah.
And someone saw me and they were like, I'd love you to speak at TEDx. And I was being asked to speak at a few other university things, giving career advice and so forth at this point. And I thought, okay, sweet, let's do it. I had no idea what TED was, no idea what TEDx was. 2 weeks before I was due to give the talk, I was like, I better look it up. Start looking at some of the TED Talks out there. And I was like, oh, this isn't, I don't know how I've managed to do this. I'm completely out of my depth. Yeah. And then 2 days before I was due to give the talk, but loads of effort into creating the talk, 2 days before I was due to give the talk, the event gets cancelled. And I was like, what's going on here? How something with such a big brand had an event cancelled with 2 days to go? And I saw you could apply to run your own events. So I thought that would be cool. And relatively successful, young, enthusiastic, wants to do positive things. Ted would, I'm sure, be more than happy for me to run one of their events. And so I applied to host one of their events and they reject me. And they reject me within like 24 hours.
Oh, God.
And I wasn't expecting that, I've got to say, to be completely honest. So it ended up taking 2 years to convince Ted that they should let me run one of their events.
Yeah,
and then
I've
the
heard
first
that in
group of
your podcast.
speakers, one of the first groups of speakers that or the first group of speakers I had to speak on that stage, I was just helping them with from my own public speaking experience and sales experience and so forth. And I think they thought that's what I did as a full-time job. So they just started to refer people through. So I started running a bit of a side hustle, if you like, helping people write and deliver talks for big stage presentations. And then it grew from there. We shut the charity fundraising company down in 2016. We just couldn't, the business model just wasn't robust enough. We just couldn't keep it going. Everyone won except for the business. So we shut it down. And I was like, well, what shall I do? And because I'd had a bit of success with some of the talks that had gone out there and some of the talks that I've been involved with, that's really how it started, and then progressed. And I developed programs specifically for thought leaders who were looking to communicate big ideas on stages and get their talks seen online, and then created some programs specifically for employees and people who are looking to improve the way they communicate at work and become more effective in that way. Because obviously for an employee, it's an amazing opportunity to showcase where you're at and hopefully level up your career and speed up your career trajectory.
Yeah, definitely. And just for curiosity, why was that hard to get selected by TED? Like, what was the selection process? They needed someone more experienced or someone who
no, it's really interesting. my inability to be able to communicate an idea properly back then was probably the biggest reason why they didn't let me do that. Because an idea is such a, if you ask someone to define an idea, it's a very fluid concept. It's a very, very hard thing to pinpoint. That is what an idea is. And I just had no idea. I had no idea. No pun intended. So, so really at the very heart of being able to articulate an idea simply, understand what an idea is, and understand why I was putting each person on the stage. There had to be a bigger reason. They were the things, and it was the best thing that could have happened to me, because every time I got rejected, because I applied multiple times, they must have been a bit fed up at the end, but every time I got rejected, a stronger application and a stronger event was being planned. Little did I know at the time. So it worked quite nicely.
So you prepared well, and then eventually, you made it. And did you apply for actually creating your independent TED Talks in Clapham, or that was just to become a speaker for TED?
Oh no, this was to create TEDxClapham, to run an event. This wasn't about speaking. This was never about me getting up on that stage and giving a talk. This was about creating a platform for other people to do that.
And once you created it, you became a curator, and did you invite other people to join you and to deliver?
Yeah, we had an amazing team. There are some people we've run 3 events. There's some people who've been part of the TEDxClapham team behind the scenes in the very background from the very beginning. Wow. We've had some members of the team end up going on to give their own TEDx event, TEDx talks. Simon Lucy, Gemma Milne, specifically off the top of my head at the moment. So they started off helping to run them, and now they've gone off and given their own talks and written books and so forth. So, it was a great way. As soon as I was given the opportunity to do it, the first thing I did was bring other people in so they could benefit and be part of the experience.
Yeah. So do you practice, like, do you have trainings together, and do you deliver speeches like every now and then? Well, besides this period that everything was blocked, but normally, So in the 6 months leading up to the talks, when we've decided who's going to speak on stage, I'm working really closely with the speakers to make sure they give the best talk that they can. So there's lots of practice. The speakers are pretty fed up with me by the end of it, because it's about creating high standards. One of the big reasons why I got into public speaking was I got so frustrated with the poor quality of idea that was being shared. Or the missed opportunity that could have been shared that wasn't shared on stage. People tend to fall into 2 camps. Either they're pretty confident on stage but say nothing useful at all, or they have got amazing things to talk about but can't deliver it in a way that gets the audience to really tune in and listen to what they're saying. So my job is about trying to address that balance. And and at the very heart and the very forefront of that is helping people create a talk that's going to take their audience on a journey, so that they're discovering, they're immersed in the problem that's being talked about, and they're discovering things kind of like a really good teacher would. Really good teachers don't just talk at you, they take you on a journey that helps you, so you're thinking all the way through, and they're the things that help people really interact and resonate with what's being said. Yeah, it's amazing. And on the business side of things, like later you created your own business as a Alex Mary public speaking coach, and delivered the training to companies, to executives. So how did that entrepreneurial side work out for you? How was it to create something from scratch? Like start a business in the first place?
Super difficult.
Yeah, right.
Everything takes 3 times longer, I think, on average. It takes 3 times longer to get to where you want to be than you think it's going to at the very beginning when things kick off. I was lucky because I was running TEDxClapham. That gave me an initial bit of credibility that perhaps I wouldn't have had otherwise. But it's hard. I wasn't working with the people I should have been working with for 18 months. And the reality of being an entrepreneur, and part of that journey is sometimes you think you know who your customer is, and that's not who it is. So there are all sorts of interesting things. I think the biggest challenge, realistically, though, thinking back on that, was I went from a company that was thriving, full of people, buzz, hype, and going into the office every day was just loads of fun because we were working with it was a like-minded group of people, all striving towards one thing, to me sitting in my living room or sitting in a cafe by myself, wondering where on earth my interaction is going to come from for the day. So that learning to cope with the loneliness aspect was certainly something that's been that is and still is sometimes, although lockdown's massively.
It's a lonely journey, front. An entrepreneur. I mean, you have to create everything. You're alone. You have to come up with solutions, with find strategies to sell, to find clients. And
it's a different kind of loneliness, because we often, the founders, when we were running the charity fundraising organization, we felt lonely at the top of that organization too. Sometimes the strange thing is it doesn't matter whether you go down the route of being a kind of a one-person band or running a company full of people. The reality is there are only so many people you're able to share certain bits of information with. So it's just a different type of loneliness that you've got to learn to deal with and get comfortable with. Yeah,
definitely. And what difficulties did you encounter in this process? Like, I don't know, like marketing, sales strategy, finance, accountancy, all that's part of starting as an entrepreneur, like from zero, let's say.
What I love about the journey into this was the clarity that you have between what is success and what is failure.
All right.
Because there is a very, very simple line that's drawn. Failure is I'm not able to feed myself and pay my rent.
Oh yeah.
So the first thing I did, pretty much the first thing I did when I knew that I was going to create something, I didn't know what it was that I was going to create. The first thing I did was I created a bankruptcy spreadsheet, and I worked out what date, given my current spending and my current budget and how many pennies I had left in my account, how quickly am I going to go bankrupt from here if I get no money in between now and then? And when you put yourself into a situation like that, it suddenly makes the job way easier. Like, it gives you the fire and the pressure that you need to succeed.
Yeah, definitely.
But it certainly gives you the kind of the motivation, whether you get there or not, and whether you make that target or make that deadline, is kind of irrelevant. But giving that there, suddenly all of the things that are going on in your head, you're able to start filtering them between, firstly, what are the jobs I need to do? Mm-hmm. And then you'll have a long list of jobs. And then the second question you ask is, what are the jobs that have to get done, like our life and death situation jobs? And suddenly that list is way shorter. And it helps you prioritize your time better and make better decisions about how you're going to pay the next month's rent and so forth. What's interesting is after I got through that first month's period, or that first period, I thought that would be it. I was like, right, I'm on my natural trajectory here. Every year, at a certain point of the year, every single year, that deadline again was looming closer. So it just goes to show that when you think you're out of the woods, or when you think things are going to go a particular way, doesn't necessarily mean that they are. Thankfully, things are, I've been around for a fair amount of time now, so you can start to predict things, and you get a better grasp and you get a better feeling of where things are at, and that deadline that you have just extends further away, which is
with experience you understand better how to react to situations and everything.
You don't think of things like, in the summer, nobody wants to do public speaking coaching. They're on holiday. They've got better things to do. So running a program in the summer is like just a complete waste of time. You're not going to get anyone on the program.
Oh yeah,
you're not going to, right? So there are busy seasons. We're a very seasonal business, really. The first half of the year is always busy, but as soon as we get to summer holidays, not interested. September onwards, always busy, because I think there's something about the mindset. September is back to school for kids in the UK.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
there's
yeah.
probably something in adults' heads being like, well, I want to get some good stuff done before the year ends. So it's
so
interesting how all of that stuff plays out.
Yeah. And yeah, I was wondering because I've seen some of the companies you've been working with, and yeah, one of them is Slaughter and May. I'm sure that our audience is
Yeah, I
interested in
worked
that.
with
Yeah,
yeah,
with lawyers
one-
who are probably very good in public speaking, or I don't know, maybe or maybe not. What's your opinion?
it's just different, and it's a different audience, right? So I was working with one of the I can't remember the exact. I think it was one of the partners at Slaughter and May.
Yeah.
They came to my public speaking accelerator a couple of years ago.
Wow.
And they were there learning how to. They wanted just to change up the way they were communicating. Part of when you start to good public speaking is not about extroversion or introversion. It's actually about empathy. It's about understanding who it is that you're speaking to in a really in-depth way. And when you're dealing with audiences that are often dealing with lawyers, what you tend to find is lots of lawyers speak in exactly the same way, which means that they become very forgettable because they're just another one of them.
Yeah.
So if you can work out a way to, just with how you communicate your ideas and the way you communicate personally and the way you deliver those ideas, if you can work out how to be slightly different, you will always be remembered. It's like think of the last conference you went to. How many speakers do you remember from that conference? You probably saw 16, 17 speakers. You probably remember one or two.
Yeah.
And it's the people who were just different.
Yeah, that's true. Wow, that's an incredible insight, actually. And yeah, so how do you actually approach this kind of requests? Because it's pretty difficult. You should study first how they interact with their clients, maybe in that case, and then propose a new strategy, a new way of communication, or yeah.
It very much depends. You've got to begin with the end in mind. Public speaking is just a medium, right? It's no different to emailing. Emailing is a medium. Public speaking is a medium too. But where public speaking is really effective is public speaking. It's about creating some sort of change. You're normally trying to change someone's opinion, or you're trying to change someone's behavior. So you need to work out what that thing you're trying to change is first, and then you work your way backwards from that, all the way to the beginning, which is what is the one thing that you need your audience to understand or grasp and remember come the end of this. Yeah,
and getting more into the actual the practical aspects of public speaking. How would you suggest getting started for someone who hasn't had any experience before, or
It's a very, very broad question, Daniel.
Yeah, I know. I can.
That's not something I've learned about yet.
Oh, sorry.
They're always listening, these devices.
Yeah, my phone went crazy for a moment.
It's funny. Siri seems to just hear absolutely everything I say on oh, you can't see my phone because I'm on one of those screens.
They are recording everything.
Siri, 100%. You know, I said something that didn't sound anything like "Hey Siri" the other day. Now it's going to go off. Yeah, and but it came up, and I reckon it's coming up more and more and more. It's crazy, all of that stuff.
Definitely.
But you know, if you want first steps, then we live in an amazing this opportunity right now that we're in lockdown, where everyone is basically on their computers all day, or they're just chilling out and having a massive holiday because that's the situation that they've had to be put into. Now is an amazing opportunity to really start thinking about what it is that you want to talk about, and what are the things that you really care about. Aristotle, who was considered to be one of the founding fathers of communication, he basically believed you need three things to be able to deliver something with conviction. The first one is pathos, which means passion. Obviously, the more passionate you are about something, that passion can get in it transfers into the people that you're talking to. There are those people who walk into a room and they'll either sap the life and energy out of your soul, or they will light up the room and manage to make even the most boring things sound like really interesting. You need to be that second person. So passion is really important. You've got to be passionate about things. Second thing he thought was important is logos. Logos is where we get the word logic from.
Right.
And This is the insights. Maybe it's because maybe you come from background in science. It's the science that you know. It's
Right.
the substance, the theories, the models, the data, the information part of your talk. The things that logically and rationally are going to get people from A, where they're starting, to B, where you want them to finish.
Yeah.
And the thing that's important to remember about Logos is you don't need to be the expert. You need to be an expert. There are lots of experts who know lots of things, and pretty much everyone in the world will know more about. Everyone in the world will know something that you don't, right? so it's understanding what it is that you can bring to the table in terms of interesting content. And then the third thing you need is ethos. And ethos is kind of about credibility. It's about your character. Why are you the right person to be speaking about your subject? The audience, to be able to trust you, needs to understand why you link to the topic that it is that you're speaking about. There needs to be a clear line of expertise there.
Yeah, definitely. It's very interesting. And so how do you approach like public speaking with like the difference between groups and individuals when you have to teach? For example, I don't know, maybe you have to teach to an audience or to people individually. Like how do you?
It's so different. So most of the programs I run are group coaching programs.
Yeah.
So they're a mixture of group coaching. So we bring everyone together on online workshops. Then they get some homework to do, and there's a private community that everyone becomes part of, and that's where they have to submit their homework. So they're submitting their homework, which is normally a video task, a video challenge.
Right.
So having to communicate video, but they're submitting it, and because there are other people on the program, that's their audience. So there's still that fear and that pressure to be able to perform. And if you can communicate well on video and get people interested and inspired about what you're doing on video, then when you're chatting to and delivering in front of a live audience, you can totally do that too. And then we have the one-to-one coaching aspect, which is when we bring people on, I'll get them on a call very much like this, and we go through the homework that they've gone through and so forth. When I'm working with my private clients, my one-to-one clients, it could be completely different. It's about putting them into scenarios that they don't necessarily expect, but also getting them to really understand and dig into what it is that they want to share. So when they've worked out what it is that they want to speak about, it's testing them on that content and giving them counter arguments to that content, and kind of beating them up a bit, toughening them up a bit, so that when they're delivering on the stage that the talk's intended for, the hard stuff's been done. They're listening to people who are ready to go, and they're walking on stage knowing that what they've got to share is amazing.
Right. But what I'm very interested at the part when you are on stage, because that's the moment when sometimes maybe you think, oh God, like all these people are having prejudices about me talking, or the way I speak, the way I interact, or make errors probably. And so how do you get over that and just keep a conversation flowing, without thinking about all these prejudices and
There are two professions where you need to be worried if you're speaking in public. One of them is being a comedian. The other one is being a politician.
Yeah.
Comedians are having to deal with drunk audiences, and by calling yourself a comedian, you're telling other people, I am going to make you laugh.
Yeah.
And by saying, I am really funny, I'm going to make you laugh, the level of expectation has suddenly risen significantly.
Yeah. Wow.
Right? They expect you to do that. So if you don't, you are going to get thrown under the bus. And we've all heard those stories of comedians that don't perhaps do as well as that, they die on stage, is what they call it. Politicians, people, particularly in the UK, people love to hate politicians. So there will always be people going to watch politicians speak and look for disagreements or look for counter arguments for what they're doing.
So lower expectations in comparison to a comedian.
Right. The reality is the worries about how we sound on stage and whether the audience is going to like what we're talking about. We've got this expectation that every time we stand up on stage, we've got to deliver a talk as good as the talks that we see on the internet. And
Yeah.
the problem is TED is like the Instagram of public speaking. The number of people who speak at Big TED, at TEDxClapham, that don't necessarily, something goes wrong, perhaps they forget their lines for a couple of minutes or whatever, but it's just edited out. So our expectation of what a good public speaker is now, relative to years ago, has skyrocketed, which certainly doesn't help with the fear aspect. But the reality is if you ask yourself, what would I be happy with if I was going to give myself a number out of 10 for my performance after this talk, that I'd be, yeah, that was fine. It wasn't amazing. Yeah. It wasn't like a 10 out of 10, but that was fine. That number might be, you'd be happy with a 6 out of 10. You'd be happy with a 7 out of 10. And by allowing yourself to deliver a 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 talk, provided you've put the preparation in beforehand, it takes away a lot of the tension, because it's like, I don't need to strive for perfection here.
Right.
I can just go out and a 6 out of 10 will be good enough. And the reality is what you think is 6 out of 10 is probably an 8 out of 10 in the audience's head. And
what would you say about building confidence? How do you build confidence, the confidence necessary to deliver a great speech in front of an audience? Because that's be completely confident that's the topic, the idea you're gonna share is gonna be successful and engaging.
The best thing that you can do is make sure you do not deliver that talk that matters a lot to you for the very first time in front of the audience that it's designed for. The very best speakers, they will practice. That's what comedians do. The best comedians don't just rock up on stage with a load of jokes they've just written. They spend months testing their jokes, working out if people find them funny or not.
Wow.
So, if you want your talk to land, you need to be practicing your talk with people who are like your audience before you have to, because they will give you feedback. They'll be like, I liked this, I didn't like this, I found this bit boring, I disagreed with this. And then all of that feedback, they're the things that actually start to build your confidence, because fear of public speaking and stage fright tends to really come from two things: either a fear of not knowing whether what you've got to say is good enough, which is what we've been talking about there, and B, not knowing whether not knowing what you've got to say well enough. Right? So you haven't learnt your words. You've kind of got an idea about what you want to speak about, but you haven't really put the time into it. Yeah. So actually just preparing your content will stop both of those things being an issue. Yeah.
Wow, very interesting. And talking a little bit about your mentorship program, how is it structured? And you've also got a public speaking accelerator, right? So how is that organized for someone who maybe is interested to
Sure. So my public speaking accelerator, that happens once a year. We do it. We run it from January through to April.
Wow.
And that's for thought leaders or for founders and leaders within organizations who are looking to kind of take the step up into thought leadership and deliver a big stage presentation. On that program, it runs very similar to how I was talking about before, but I take people from coming up with a talk concept that is relevant and interesting for an audience to helping them find and land the speaking engagement they're going to speak at, to then writing the talk and delivering it and so forth. The stuff I work with employees, when I run employee group coaching programs within organizations, we run it all online, and we have a private community, and we have the one-to-one coaching elements, but it's a little bit more fluid. So we're not working towards a specific talk. It's putting them in different situations so that they improve their storytelling, and they improve the way they deliver, and they become more self-aware, and they understand that the audience has to come first. And it's taking them through a journey that means that they're going to be able to do that. But also, when it comes to delivering, whether they're delivering on video, online, or whether they're delivering in person, they can make the most of the medium that they're delivering it through.
Right. And considering that your let's say your pupils are executives sometimes, what's their expectations? Because probably sometimes you're younger than them, and they're expert in their fields. So how do you interact with them? How do you teach, to someone that's that level,
The
of
first thing,
expertise? Yeah.
the first thing is they're the ones giving the talk, not me.
Yeah.
Right. So, when people come along to me, most of my business comes from recommendations.
Right.
So, people have normally heard about or had a good experience, and then they've shared that experience with other people. So there's an element of trust that's been formed by that level.
Yeah.
One of my very first clients was a world champion boxer, and he's quite famous, and he only ever wanted to meet in the Dorchester, which when I was sort of 25 at the time, and I was absolutely fine with that because I'd never been somewhere like that before.
Wow.
And the first thing he said to me is, "You look far too young to be doing this." So ever since then, I've got a bit of a baby face. So ever since then, I've grown a bit of facial hair just to make me look perhaps a little bit more older. But I'm as my fiance said to me yesterday, "You're well into your 30s now." So I'm hoping that a bit of time with the reputation and so forth has gone through. But I've been very lucky. I've worked with people who are at the very, very top of their game. And when you've got a bit of a catalogue of people who've done that, the results can speak for themselves.
You've got credibility. Yeah,
and they can see these people delivering presentations. Right, the talks are online for them for people to see. So rather than judge me by how I coach or how old I am, judge me by the talks that people who I have coached have delivered.
Yeah, definitely. And so returning to TED Talks, like they mainly deal with with people who want to share ideas. So what's your opinion on that? Because it's ideas rather than stories, for example.
Well, ideas are things that can be extrapolated and get people to understand the bigger picture about something. The reality is there are a good speaker has 4 tools at their disposal when they're sharing anything. And any speaker, it doesn't matter whether you're speaking at TED or not, you are trying to communicate an idea. The problem is most people try to communicate too many ideas in a short space of time, which means that their message becomes really unclear. So having the ability to communicate one message over 15 to 18 minutes, that takes a bit of skill. But to be able to communicate an idea effectively, you need to be able to storytell, and you need to be able to share some theory and statistics and data, but you also need to be sharing your own insights. Too many people these days deliver presentations, and I could have looked up every single bit of information that they shared, and it was on the first page of Google. If the reason why we listen to speakers, the reason why there is a market for thought leadership is because we care as much about the insights of the speaker who's delivering the talk as we do about the theory that they're going to share. So you might share a theory, but your opinion on that theory and your reasons behind why you have that opinion, they're the things that are really important. And they're the things that build a relationship between the audience and the person who's speaking. Yeah,
it's very interesting how you approach that. And I was reading through your mentorship program, and you cover different aspects of public speaking. And
you're doing an excellent job at plugging my programs, Daniel.
I need to study very well what you do. It was interesting, like, to see your story into how do you develop. Actually, it was incredible. And I was wondering, what do you mean by developing stage presence, like developing like an engaging way of delivering a speech, or what does that mean?
I went to an awards ceremony a few years ago. Lots of people there, lots of A-listers, and members of the royal family and all of this.
Wow.
And there was one particular person who walked up, who was an actor. I won't mention him. Who was an actor, and even as they were walking on stage, the atmosphere in the whole 2,000 probably seater theatre changed.
Right.
And he got up and he walked up on stage and he said nothing. He just looked around at the audience, smiled, and that for me right there is stage presence. You don't have to say anything. You're just there being, but you have complete control over your audience and the emotions that they have got.
You create a
and
connection.
That's what that person did. They created a connection without trying to create a connection. The number of people who start their talks with, let me tell you a little bit about me. This is why I'm here speaking on stage. I've done this, this, this. That is why I have the right to be talking to you about this particular subject.
Yeah.
The second you start doing that is the second that you're giving your audience permission to turn on the phone, check their emails, half listening. You've lost your audience.
Oh God, yeah.
The people who are the very best, the people who are at the very top of their game, they walk on and assume authority rather than try and get authority from other people. So when I'm talking about stage presence, it's about having that ability to walk on stage, assume authority, and regardless of whether you've got doubts in your head, coming across on the outside as though you have every right to be there and it is your time for them to be listening to you. Yeah, and the first, let's say, 10, 20 seconds are very important to grab their attention. So what's your, let's say, how do you do that, for example? Like, do you have any examples on how to grab the attention in the very first seconds of a speech? 3 words. What happens next? Oh, wow, okay. So for an audience, we make, when the speaker's being introduced up on stage by the compere, we are making all sorts of generalizations and assumptions about what that person's going to be speaking about. Yeah. In the first 30 seconds that a speaker is on stage, they need to wipe all of those assumptions away and do something that is, or say something that's completely unexpected. There was an economist, or there is an economist called Rutger Bregman, and he delivered a talk back at TED in 2017. I was out in New York at the time in the audience, and he walked on stage and goes, I want to start with a question. Why do poor people make such poor decisions? Right. Wow. And he just paused. As soon as he said that, I put my phone down. I was already on my phone. I was in conference mode. It was after lunch. I wasn't really paying attention. And as soon as he said that, I was like, you can't say that. Where on earth are you going with this? We had someone speak at TEDxClapham. Yeah, it created curiosity. We had someone speak at TEDxClapham a couple of years ago. It was 2 people. Very rare I put a pair of people up on stage, but I did for this talk. Andy Shovel and Pete Sharman. They've been creating a plant-based protein that can be used as a substitute for meat. It's out in shops and so forth now. It's we're starting to see a lot more of that stuff come out. And their goal for their talk was, they're not speaking to vegans, they're speaking to meat eaters, and they're going to try and get them to eat less meat. So they walked up on stage, and I was like, you're going to have to capture people's imaginations here. So they walked up on stage and they were eating a Big Mac. They were coming on, so both are eating a Big Mac, and they start talking about the concept of veganism and how it's quite an exclusive club. And it's like, well, you can't wear that if you want to be a vegan. So he took off their leather belts, took off their leather shoes, and the audience is there just like, what? Yeah, can you imagine? I didn't expect this. They've got everybody's attention. Wow. And then they can take them because they've got their attention early on, they can take them on the journey that they wanted to go on, to talk about why eating less meat and so forth was important. But they made it relatable to people that aren't normally involved in that. And that talk's gone and created lots of controversy online. but also created lots of views. It's been seen well over 100,000 times, and that's good. That means the message is getting out there and it's being shared, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, definitely. And what do you mean by, for example, performing under pressure when on stage, and how do you deal with that?
It's about expectation management, right? We were talking about that a little bit earlier. We were saying how when you've got a talk that you really care about, that you've got to give, you want it to go really well. And the problem is the more you want something to go well, often the harder it is to make it go well. Whereas sometimes you can turn up to something, not care about it at all, and it just goes, it couldn't go better. So you get into this mode of being like, well, I won't practice, I can kind of get through it. And it's never, so there's this balance. But it's like an athlete. I've worked with lots of athletes. Some of them have been in the Olympics. So, you train 4 years and you've got to give your best performance at the end of 4 years worth of training. There is a huge amount riding on that. And when there's a huge amount riding on that, and there's been this constant build up and there's weight on people's shoulders, there are psychological things that you need to do to take that weight off so that you can give yourself the chance of performing as well as you can. And when you're leading up to giving a big presentation on a big stage where the people in the audience might be mega important and you have to make the right impression with them, you're going through exactly the same journey. So it's taking them through so they can perform at their best when it matters.
It's very interesting. And I would like to mention a few, like a book that I've read, and also a famous person that talks about communication. For example, the book is called the Charisma Myth. I don't know if you've read it. It's
I don't actually. That doesn't ring a bell.
It's very interesting. It actually talks about the fact that, okay, like it does. If you don't like public speaking, for example, if you think that you cannot ever develop that skill in your life, this book tells you that basically you actually can by practicing. So do you think charisma can be developed over time, or is something that's like you start with at an advantage, for example, in your early life?
Yeah, absolutely. Charisma can be developed in time. There's no doubt. But it goes back to what I was saying with Aristotle. You need passion. There needs to be a good reason why you're talking about the subject. And then you've got to have something interesting to say. When you've got those three things in line, actually, it's very easy to speak with charisma about something. The problem is most people don't have those three things in check in their own heads while they're preparing what it is that they're going to say. So it's important. And the other thing to remember here is that what we see as charisma is actually very, very different depending on the person that's delivering. It's about authenticity. For some people, charisma is these big, bolshy gestures and shouting and whooping on stage. For other people, it's much more subtle and it's quite quiet. So it's measured.
Would you define it as the ability to influence in some way, or it's something different?
I think it's. I think it's more about. I don't think it's necessarily about influence. I think you can have charisma without influencing other people.
Yeah.
But I think it's about speaking, or I hate the word authentically because it's become a buzzword. Really, you must deliver authentically on stage, all of this stuff. But it's about being you.
Yeah.
And charisma is really what happens when the person that
you're genuine,
you're trying to speak to is listening, and they trust you and they feel safe. When you've got those things in, then I think charisma is part of that. The Greeks believed that charisma was something that only gods possessed. But I think that you can learn a lot of the things that you need to come across as charismatic. It just takes a bit of time and practice to show it.
Yeah, definitely. It's very interesting. And is there any particular speech that you've liked in your career, and why would you say you've liked it? Like anything particular?
There are a few talks that I think are great.
Yeah.
One of the ones that I love and I talk about a lot on my programs is one by an astronaut called Chris Hadfield.
Wow.
He gave a talk called What I Learned from Going Blind in Space. What I Learned About Fear from Going Blind in Space. And it is an absolute masterclass in telling a story and painting a picture. He spends 7 minutes at the beginning of his talk talking about what it feels like to go up into space.
Wow.
And it takes you back to your childhood and imagining what it would be like to be an astronaut. He basically is giving you that experience with his words and with his delivery.
That's amazing.
And what's really clever is, and this is perhaps slightly more advanced, and we're getting kind of slightly into the higher level stuff here. The people who are the very best at influencing are masters of using metaphor.
Right.
By being able to use analogy to explain perhaps slightly more advanced concepts in simple ways. The type of analogies that you use have a fundamental impact on how your audience will see them, because you are pre-processing that image for them. It's like yoga teachers. Yoga teachers are amazing at using metaphors because you've got the kind of technical names for each of the poses. But then the English names for some of these poses, you've got mountain pose. Mountain pose is just standing, right?
Yeah.
But if I tell you to stand no, you're not going to stand. You're going to be in mountain pose. Immediately, what are you going to do? You want to stand strong and tall like a mountain, right? And there are all sorts of these different, they're just making you think about something that you already know, but they're making you think about it in a different way. And if you can, for those people who are perhaps listening to this that are pretty good communicators at the moment, if you can look at how you use metaphors in the right way, you will take your influence game to the next level. Yeah.
It's so interesting. Yeah. For example, I've been following lately the podcast of Joe Rogan, who interviews lots of
I know
famous people, Elon Musk and others, and it's very inspiring. Yeah, and because they share their path to success, so it's incredible, and people can perhaps relate to them in like at the beginning of this journey. So
and they do share their past success. But what I like about what Joe Rogan does is he creates a conversation very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And when a conversation starts, it's easy to get immersed into it. And the conversation goes, and he might have an idea of some of the things he wants to talk about, but he's not too kind of rigid on, I'm going to ask this question after this. He kind of just lets it flow, and he can take
he
the
goes
conversation
straight into it. Yeah, it's true.
Wherever he wants, which is an art, and it takes practice. And I created a podcast a couple of years ago. I'm yet to do a second season, but there is a serious art to being able to ask a question in the right way. And a lot of this is about how can you make your guest relax as soon as they possibly can. Because lots of people might not be used to delivering content and
definitely
thinking about interesting ways to explain the things that they're talking about.
So now you're making me doubt if I make you comfortable enough in this.
You've done absolutely fine.
No, I thought it was
this
fun.
Has been fun.
It was interesting. And so what's just to conclude, what's your long-term goal, let's say, for your business, your strategy, your ambitions for the future?
That's a really hard question. And if I had an answer to that for you, I would absolutely share it. But it's something that I'm working out at the moment.
You're working on it.
It's okay. What you tend to find is you have a goal to get to a certain point. And then when you reach that point, you've got to work out what the next thing is. And that can often take a bit of time to really piece out and work out.
Yeah.
I wasn't actually meant to be around to be delivering any of this stuff. I was meant to be on a 6-month sabbatical, taking a step back from coaching for 6 months so I could work out what my next goals were. Obviously, COVID has had other ideas. So I think until I've had that prolonged little bit of space, because it's been busy, right? So because you need to take a step back. And until I've had the chance to really take a step back, it's quite hard to work out exactly where it's going to go. But fundamentally, for me, the importance of what you, the big thing for me is I want more people to realize that what you say matters. And I think as a secondary thing that I think is very important, I'm very passionate about at the moment, it's about this concept of debate. We've become so intolerant of different ideas, other people's ideas that don't necessarily sit perfectly with us. People are being ostracized for having an opinion that they are perfectly entitled to have. And one of the trends that I've noticed working with some of my high level clients of late is more people are becoming scared to say what they think, what they really think, because of the repercussions. And that's bad. We've got to do something about reigniting what a debate is and being okay with non-agreement. I think that's really important too.
Acceptance of others' opinions, and debating, definitely. And I mean, I think we've covered pretty much everything. And thanks so much for joining, actually. And guys, if you're interested in public speaking, get in touch with Alex, because he's great. And
I've got for those who actually have made it this far, I'm testing a new program. It's not it's not released, it's not out yet. So for anyone who'd like to be involved in a test in a couple of months' time, for a new program that I'm working on, get in touch, and I'll send you some more info.
That's great. Thank you so much, Alex. Thank you guys for joining today, and see you all in the next live. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.